Hey y'all, it's week 4 of the Three Rivers Homestead January Pantry Challenge. And even though it's week 4, I'm still going to continue it on. I might not give you a video every week, but this video is going to be about a bag of beef that I had in the freezer for 4 years. It's been in there 4 years because it's been at the bottom of my freezer, and my sister had a cow that she processed, and we got half of it. We paid her for half the cow, and it just sat in there. I used a whole bunch of hamburger. I think I used all the ground beef, but lots of the other pieces I just left and forgot about because I've got so much in my freezer. But I emptied the whole bag of beef. I had some knuckles in there and some marrow bones. I had the fat that I made tallow with. The bones I used for bone broth, and I'll show you that in my video. The fat I made the tallow with, and I'll show you. I'll have that video out soon, hopefully, how I did that from start to finish. And I had some steaks in there. I fried that with the tallow. Best french fries I've ever had. I fried those in tallow. Was so good. So I'm going to show you how I got rid of that whole bag of beef and processed it and made totally different things with it, and then I'll be using that for a while. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll turn you around and show you what I did with that huge bag of beef. Even got some of that beef canned, and I will try that in a later video that's 4 years old that I can, and we'll see how that was too. So I'll go ahead and show you what I did with that bag of beef. Hey y'all, we bought a half a cow about almost 4 years ago from my sister. She raised it, and I am going to cook that up because it's been in my freezer that long. So I'm going to defrost everything. I've got a bunch of roasts, and I've also got a rib roast. I probably should have cooked that during the holidays, but I'm going to cook it now. So I'm going to sit all this in a tub and put it in the fridge and let it defrost. So I've also got some beef fat and some beef knuckles and beef bones. I'm going to make some tallow out of that. I've never done that before. I'll have a whole video showing you how I do that, but I'm going to defrost that also, and I'll cut that up and put that in my crock pot and make some tallow with that. I've used it in a couple dishes, and I have really enjoyed using it. It was really good in some french fries. You just basically cook it down, and then I put it in this pot and put it in the fridge, and it turns solid, and you'll just scrape the stuff off the bottom, and I'll do that a couple times just so all those impurities will come out. And when it's clean, I'll just put that in a jar, and it's shelf stable. And here I'm going to take those bones and I'm going to roast them in the oven, cover them with some water, and then I'll make some beef broth, some beef bone broth, and I'll put that in the freezer, and I'll give this scraps to my chickens. They're going to love me for that. It makes a really delicious and dark broth, and I can use that for a soup, or I can even just probably heat that up and drink it. It's really good for you. So I'll put the lid on there and write that on there. And I'm going to take these roasts. These are from the ones you saw earlier. I'm going to cut those up and can them. And what happened was I had this all cut up and ready to go, and our power went off. It had snowed. I'm like, why am I doing a canning project in the snow, in a snowstorm? So I cut it all up, and I had to put it in the fridge and let it sit for a while. But after a few hours, our power came back on. There was a wreck. So I canned up all that beef, and I am so happy. And now I'm going to take one of those packets of cube steak. I've got it in some paper towels, just soaking up all that liquid since it's defrosted and it's really wet. So I want to dry it off really good, and I'll just put it in some seasoned flour. I've got salt and pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder. I like to let it sit in the flour for a little bit, and then I'll dredge them a couple more times to get that coating nice and stuck on there. I'm just going to go ahead and get this finished, and then we'll fry it. And I'm using some of that tallow that I made. I'm just going to take about 5 or 6 of these pieces that I cut up and heat those up, and then we'll fry our steaks in there. It's kind of like you're making your own shortening, but it's a lot better for you than those vegetable shortenings. So I'm going to go ahead and get these fried. I'm going to fry them on both sides, and then I'll put this batch in the oven and keep them warm, and then I'll fry the other batch. But just fry them on both sides till your desired doneness. And then I'm going to make some gravy. So I'm just going to take that flour that I used to dredge the steaks in, and all I'm doing is just mixing that flour up with the grease or the tallow. And I'll just let that flour cook out a little bit. And I always add cold water to mine. I always heard that that gives it less lumps, and it always works for me. So I add in some water, and then I'll add in some milk, because I always make my gravy the same way my mom did. And I don't measure, I just stir it around until it gets thickened up, and I'll just add some salt and pepper to taste. And I don't know why it seems like it takes a lot of pepper in my gravy. I don't know why, but I always add a pretty good bit and just stir that around till it starts to thicken up. And then I'm going to put my biscuits, or I put my biscuits in the air fryer and cooked them in there. I've got my steaks here. I've got some corn and some mashed potatoes. I have to have corn and mashed potatoes with mine and my gravy. And this was so good, y'all. I cannot believe how good that steak was, especially fried in the tallow. That gravy was amazing. This is just a delicious comfort food. And I kept thinking to myself, why did I keep those steaks in there for so long? I should have been eating these long ago, because they're so delicious, and I think this is Doug's favorite dinner. And I took some leftover steak and a leftover biscuit and had this for breakfast the next morning. And we had wings the next day, so I fried my cut up potatoes in some tallow, and those are the best French fries I've ever had. I will definitely do that again. All right, tonight I'm going to make the rib roast, and I made this when we had the snowstorm too, so I had to have this stay in the oven for a couple hours, but it was so good, so I think I'll make it that way again. But I just salted it and left it in the fridge for a couple of hours, and I took it out and let it come to room temperature. I mixed up some melted butter with some garlic and onion powder and rubbed that all over it. I put my oven on 500, and then I put it in there and let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then I turned it down to 350. It was only in there an hour before the power went out, but I took it back out and it was perfect. So I will have to write that down and do that next time. It was so delicious. I didn't get a video of my plate, but I had some pictures here of how perfect it came out. Perfect medium rare, and it was just so delicious. You could cut it with a fork. We did have a lot of leftovers left over, so I went ahead and mixed up a pasta salad with some leftover Italian dressing that I had, and just put in some peppers and some cucumbers that I had in the fridge and mixed that up. And then I cubed up my steak. I've got a ton of Brussels sprouts that I needed to use up, so I just cut them into fourths and put some butter and some oil in there, and I'm gonna cook those. And I've got some peppers and onions there, and I'll put the steak in there and just kind of stir fry it. I don't want to really cook it that much because I love a medium rare steak, so I'll just toss that around until they get nice and golden brown. These things are gorgeous, and love this steak. I love leftover steak, especially if it's a little bit more rare and then you cook it again. And I've got leftover mashed potatoes and my pasta salad, and dinner is ready. Well, I feel so accomplished. I feel like I got a lot done this week. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I hope y'all have a wonderful week, and I'll see y'all in the next one.